U.S. military forces stationed in Middle East are currently on heightened alert as they prepare for potential air combat operations in the vicinity of Iran. The operations could target a range of strategic sites, including Iranian naval vessels, nuclear facility, ballistic missile infrastructure, and drone production centers. Additionally, there is a possibility that the headquarters of the Iranian Revolution Guard Corps may be in the crosshairs of these impending operations. Kataib Hezbollah has released a statement saying that they are suspending attacks against coalition forces in Iraq and Syria, but the statement is too late. In a related development, the Israeli Defense Forces conducted precision strikes on January 30th against Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. IDF fighter jets successfully hit a Hezbollah operational command center and an observation post in the Qiyam area. The strikes continued throughout the day, targeting an observation post and a military compound affiliated with the terrorist group in the Aita Ash Saib and Mai Bibi area. On January 28th, in the early hours, a U.S. military base in Jordan was attacked, resulting in the death of 3 sergeants from the U.S. Army's 960th Engineer Brigade. Within the next 15 hours, 6 U.S. Air Force aerial refueling aircraft were deployed from the United States to the Middle East. This indicates the potential involvement of various aircraft, including the B-2 stealth bomber, the Rockwell B-1 Lancer, the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II aircraft, and the Eurofighter Typhoon. Around the Persian Gulf, the U.S. F-35 squadron and missile defense units are on high alert with full force readiness announced. By January 30th, there was an increase in activity over Iraqi airspace. U.S. officials informed Politico that Biden might approve a strike plan on the evening of January 30th. Retaliatory actions are expected to commence in early February, primarily targeting a series of locations such as the IRGC and jihadist group within Iraq and Syria. This response is a direct consequence of a significant attack on a U.S. military base, which resulted in injuries to nearly 40 U.S. soldiers. The latest development includes potential targets in the Persian Gulf, including Iranian naval assets. A meeting was held between the NATO Secretary-General, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In this context, the visit of NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg in Washington, D.C. on January 29 takes on special significance. In a joint press conference with the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, Stoltenberg directly addressed the security challenges posed by the China-Russian alliance and emphasized the increased necessity of NATO in the face of such threats. During his visit, Stoltenberg not only met with Blinken but also with the U.S. Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This meeting could indicate NATO's full involvement in U.S. military actions against Iran and its proxy organizations. The attack on the U.S. military base may trigger Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, which considers an attack on one member as an attack on all NATO members. NATO, primarily a military organization, has historically existed to counter threats like the former Soviet Union, especially now as NATO and the US together represents half of the world's GDP and military power. The growing military alliance between Russia and China makes NATO's military strength and strategic deployment particularly crucial. Military observers are analyzing the U.S. military's movement, indicating that the U.S.'s response to the recent attack will be substantial. According to social media platform X, 6 KC-135 Stratotanker refueling aircraft, which departed from the United States on January 28th, had reached the Middle East by 2 p.m. on January 30th. The Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker, designed for aerial fueling, supports strategic bomber fighters and tactical bombers, enabling them to remain operational at the front lines for several hours and potentially reach as far as Tehran. In a simultaneous development, a squadron of 6 B-52H heavy bombers, each armed with 24 cruise missiles, discreetly arrived in Europe. According to the report, 4 of these bombers will be in direct combat readiness, while the other 2 will serve as reserves. Additionally, an unspecified number of B-1B bombers have quietly joined the fleet. By the afternoon of January 30th, US fighters were conducting low-altitude flights in the border regions of Iraq and Syria, supported by British Royal Air Force refueling planes from Cyprus heading to the Middle East. By the evening, the US military's mobilization in the Syria-Iraq region was at a heightened state of alert. F-35 squadron and missile defense units were declared fully prepared for action. Over 30 US military aircrafts were detected over Iraqi airspace. Reports indicate that US fighters conducted intensive and extensive operations in the skies of western Anbar province in Iraq and over the Persian Gulf. Britain is getting ready to send either the aircraft carrier Queen Elizabeth or the aircraft carrier Prince of Wales to the Red Sea as a replacement for the American aircraft carrier Dwight Eisenhower, which is due to return to the US. This situation is a prelude to a retaliatory strike against Iran for the deaths of 3 US soldiers. The scale of the preparation is significant, and online experts speculate that it will not be a minor operation. According to a source quoted by Bloomberg, the US might be planning to covert strike against Iran, one of that the US would not openly claim responsibility for. It could be similar to the Trump administration's targeted killing of General Soleimani, possibly aiming at certain Iranian officials. Defense officials connected to the US Central Command suggest another potential target, sinking the MV Beshad and the 2 escorting Iranian warships in the Gulf of Aden. The MV Beshad, a command and surveillance ship of the IRGC, has been roaming the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden for months. It is believed to be providing intelligence and targeting assistance to the Houthi terrorist organization in Yemen. Crucially, if B-2 stealth bombers are involved, Iran's nuclear facilities could be in jeopardy. None can escape the GBU-57 massive ordnance perpetrator carrier by B-2s. The escorting F-35s and among the world's most lethal, survivable, and connected fighter aircraft, making the scenario a dramatic spectacle. Is Iran prepared? Judging by Iran's current response, they seem to realize their mistake. The Islamic Republic of Iran's representative with the United Nations representative stated on Sunday night to the Islamic Republic news agency that Iran has no connection whatsoever with the attack on the US base in Syria and Iraq. This implies that Iran should not be held responsible for the 150 attacks on US military base in Syria and Iraq. Unfortunately, only Iran seemed to believe this claim. The problem is that US bombers are already en route to the Middle East. Iran has told the US via intermediaries that if it strikes Iranian soil directly, Tehran will itself hit back at American assets in the Middle East. In this type of situation, there is only one thing to do: attack Iran. The war will come regardless. When our primary objectives become avoiding war or escalation, we are at the mercy of our most ruthless adversaries. Israel, as a staunch ally of the United States, is also not idle and has taken the opportunity to launch intense airstrikes against Iranian-related targets. On the morning of January 29, Israel launched 3 missiles targeting the IRGC Quds Forces headquarters in southern Damascus, Syria. The attack resulted in the death of 6 high-ranking officers of the IRGC Quds Force. The Quds Force is the IRGC's overseas special operation unit involved in the intelligence gathering and training of proxy armed forces outside Iran and active in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Afghanistan. The US government has designated it as a terrorist organization. Israeli commandos hospital kill Palestinian gunmen. Israel's operations extend beyond military strikes. At 5:30 a.m. on January 30th, an Israel commando team disguised as Palestinians neutralized 3 Palestinian gunmen in a hospital on the West Bank. They left Jenin Hospital at 5:40 a.m. without any civilian injuries or awareness of the operation. The undercover team, known as MISTAARVIM, is a highly trained elite counter-terrorism unit fluent in Arabic and Arab-style appearances and skilled in dealing with radical elements. They used silenced weapons and had precise information about the terrorist locations, names, and faces. The Israel military confirmed that one of the targets had planned on the October 7th attack with the other two being members of Hamas and the Jenin Government Organization, both involved in recent attacks. Iran's reaction. Meeting location. In northeastern Syria, IRGC senior officials are treading cautiously. On January 28th, they held an emergency meeting in Deir Ezzor, seemingly preparing for an impending storm. This suggests that the U.S. response might be unprecedentedly fierce and direct compared to the past actions. Inside Iran, the Air Defense Force have entered the highest state of alert in anticipation of potential U.S. bombings. Amidst this tense atmosphere, it's rumored that Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, has taken shelter in an underground bunker behind the residence in Tehran to avoid potential U.S. and Israeli attacks. Meanwhile, a revolutionary undercurrent is stirring within Iran. Reports indicate significant political upheaval, with growing dissatisfaction towards Khamenei, who might be on the verge of being replaced. The Iranian public mood is volatile, with many abandoning Islam and some even burning mosques in protests. A recent shocking survey revealed that over 80% of Iranians reject the Islamic Republic, favoring the establishment of a democratic government instead. This survey, involving 1,580,000 Iranians, showed that 81% of the domestic population and 99% of Iranians abroad prefer a democratic government over the current regime. The current situation in Iran resembles a political thriller filled with suspense and intrigue, with everyone holding their breath for the next development. Even the Russians are feeling the tension, beginning to withdraw troops from Syria, Surat Abbas. The secret of drones. Amidst rising global tensions, a shocking revelation disrupted the calm. According to January 26 Wall Street Journal report, terrorist organizations can attack U.S. bases using drones because the U.S. air defense systems misidentify enemy drones as friendly. The U.S. military's communication system is controlled by advanced AI and complex computer systems. For a drone to interact with this system, it must pass through a series of stringent identity checks, not only matching frequencies precisely, but also rapidly cracking highly complex codes. This undoubtedly requires the support of a powerful supercomputer network. The jihadist groups supported by Iran don't possess such capabilities, and even Russia lacks this ability. Apart from the US, only the Chinese Communist Party has this capability. The CCP's decade of infiltration in various corners of America, especially given the US relative openness to China, have allowed it to deeply understand US military technology. Currently, experts analyze that the Biden administration's decision regarding Iran will have far-reaching impacts on America's international image and global strategy. On one hand, if the US can effectively deter Iran, it could demonstrate strong international leadership. On the other hand, if deterrence fails, it could lead to further deterioration of the international situation. This situation reminds us of some decisive moments in US history. Under George W. Bush's tenure, the iron fist policy against Saddam Hussein and Afghanistan terrorist organizations once made them go silent for decades. At the time, even Iran dared not make any rash moves, knowing full well the consequences of US intervention. However, during Obama's 8 years, the fight against terrorism seemed less forceful, leading to a resurgence of terrorist activities. Subsequently, under Trump, events like the killing of Soleimani in January 2020 didn't seem to effectively curb attacks supported by Iran against US forces. These events included rockets, drones, and improvised explosive devices. In Trump's era, the strengthening of Iran's ties with Hamas, the expansion of the Houthis' army, and Hezbollah's consolidation in Lebanon marked new directions in regional conflicts. When Russian troops crossed into Ukraine, the global balance of power began to shift. Under the influence of the CCP, some countries and organizations started to boldly challenge the US, disregarding previous sanctions threats. North Korea no longer hides its missile test. The Houthis rebels start attacking merchant ships, and even the IRGC boldly targets US bases. Now, global attention is forced on how the Biden administration will respond to these challenges. Historically, when Bush had been in power, hostilities might have already begun. During Bush's era, faced with Saddam's provocations, the US responded decisively, showcasing its military dominance and deterring even the Soviet Union. The world now eagerly awaits whether the Biden administration can display the same decisiveness and strategy in the face of these turbulent international challenges.